We can see it in ourselves, right? So whatever you're seeing in me is in you. Otherwise, you can't see it.
That's
you know?
some deep stuff. Come on. I'm going to give you some snaps.
Right?
For that. Fitness is a big part of your life.
Yeah.
When did that start? Were you always like into fitness as a kid, or did that kind of evolve later?
Oh, it probably evolved. I mean, racing got me into it because I had to be strong. So I started actually probably working out when I was like 14.
So what kind of training did you do early on for kind of getting stronger, I guess, to be able to handle the car?
Push-ups, like I had one of those, a bar with a weight on the bottom and working on my grip strength, my forearms. I'd go into the gym and I'd use equipment. Like before I had my license, my parents, because I lived in the middle of nowhere, they'd let me take the car and drive to the YMCA a couple miles away, and I'd go work out, drive home.
So you're hitting the Y, it's a first of all, Midwest represent, and
Sometimes they only have a Y.
That's
okay?
it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The YMCA was, kind of everything. There was a community center that we had in one of the neighborhoods I lived in, but, just having that outlet too.
Yeah.
And also, again, it's not uncommon that somebody under the quote legal age is going to drive somewhere, by the way,
My sister and I were driving when we were not tall enough to reach both the pedals and the steering wheel.
You don't say.
I mean, yeah. We were driving around my parents' building in my dad's truck, and my sister would steer, and then I would work the pedals, or vice versa.
This sounds like a movie.
And this is really what happened.
Little Rascals.
Like,
yeah.
okay, hit the, brake, slow down, and we just inch our way around the building. At like probably 6, I don't know, 7, I don't know. We were really young.
Did you rob banks as well? I mean, holy moly.
We would be unassuming.
Right. It's unassuming now. Like, there was obviously people had an eye out for if you come into the bank with a mask on.
Now,
right.
What are they doing now?
So crazy. So growing up in the Midwest, what was it for you? I think I heard a little bit of a story of how when you initially kind of got into driving, that you were just kind of looking for something maybe with your dad just to do for just connection time. Were you guys gonna I guess get a boat?
Yeah,
was the original plan?
Yeah,
Can you tell us about that?
You got a lot of good parts of the story. We were. I was 10 and my sister was 8, and my dad worked all the time, and my mom was able to stay at home with us, and so we didn't see our dad very much, and so the idea was, what can we do on the weekends to spend time together and get be closer as a family. So yeah. One of the ideas was to get a boat, but that didn't work out. And so instead, they decided to get go-karts. And that was really because of my sister. My sister, she's younger than me. She was the one that was 8. She was super into it. So on the weekends, my dad would work on sprint cars, midgets, like dirt. They race on dirt ovals and go sideways and kick up clay and all kinds of stuff. And my sister and I would sit in the stands, and my dad would be working on the cars in the pits, and we just get $20 and have like the long licorice, and we'd get the snow cones with the rainbow snow cones, Snickers and whatever else, and we just have a amazing time in the stands. And so we've been at racetracks our whole life. So yeah, I mean, my dad got his boy, that's for sure.
Because your sister, so it's just the two of you.
Yeah.
And your sister's how much older than you?
She's younger. She's 2 years younger.
2 years younger, and she was out there doing her thing?
Yeah, she was the one that wanted to do it. And
wow.
I've realized more so now that I'm not really like the one that always comes up with an idea to do something, but I'm always up for it. So if somebody's like, hey, you want to go skydiving? I'm like, I don't know, but maybe, gosh, I probably should say yes. Do you want to go horseback riding? I'd be like, sure, I guess. So I'm kind of like, sure. And I don't want to get left out. And I don't have FOMO, but I feel like I don't like fear or complacency to play a role in growing and having experiences. And I know it's in those kinds of experiences that you make memories and you expand your comfort zone, and you learn things that you love. So I think, being able to try everything. So when I was a kid, I did volleyball, I did basketball, cheerleading, band, choir, track. Like, I participated in everything school had to offer. So I think that's just kind of the mindset, which is why probably racing came into it, because it was like, sure, let's do it. So I just was like, didn't want to get left out.
So tell us about the first time that you did the go-karts. I think it was like more of a legit go-kart.
It was a real one to go on the racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad had finally got them built. And as I said, my sister and I were driving around my dad's building. He worked in construction and installed windows and stuff. So his company was in a construction area. So there was a big parking lot. And so we went out back to the parking lot, and they set up, WD-40 cans and brake cleaner cans in a circle for my sister and I to drive around the circle and drive the go-kart for the first time. And so as we're going around the circle, we're inside of a construction company, actually. So this is where you'll find dock. There are like trailer docks in the back where this parking lot is. And so there's also construction trailers as well. And so I'm going around, and all of a sudden I go to hit the brake and slow down. And there's a lever that goes from the, like a little box next to the seat, and it goes straight forward to the brake pedal. It's a rod, so that it's hooked up to the brake pedal itself, and so it will work the brakes through this box and go back. Anyway, the pin that hooks up the rod to the actual pedal came undone, so there was no brake anymore. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 10 and I have no idea what to do. So I just freaked out and went straight, and I was heading straight for a construction trailer that is about yay high. And I veered at the last second and went head on into a concrete wall. My arms flew back, and I burnt my coat on the exhaust, and I had bruises all over. And of course, my dad, being the one that wants to make sure everything is the highest quality and best equipment, he's like, all right, well, we're going to have to get a new go-kart now because that's twisted. So we just got another go-kart and put it together so that I would have like a perfectly straight go-kart. Unfortunately, that go-kart then went to my mom, and my mom started racing. So my mom and my sister and I all raced.
Holy moly.
Yeah, she ended up racing.
So
for a
you
little
got
while.
back in after this.
Oh yeah.
For
This is
your
the first time.
Like,
Yeah.
I was watching a little something about that story with my son who's 10.
Aw.
And I was like, what did you notice about this? And he was like, she got back up and did it again.
Yeah.
She, even despite something bad happening, she got back in the seat and kept going. And like, that's such a great story for your life, like to kick things off. Like, for a lot of people, I'm done. Never doing this again. Are you kidding me? My coat's burnt. Like whatever. Like, that's crazy. So already there's like some kind of resilience there in you.
Yeah.
And so what was it about racing that you kept persisting in that sport particularly? Because you just mentioned you did all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And what was it about it for you that like you decided to put more focus into, to the degree that you ended up going to England and leaving the Midwest?
I think it played into an instant gratification kind of a sport where it was tangible lap time. Like, you can go out and you do a 37:56 lap time, 37 seconds, 56 tenths, and then you go out again and do a 37:32, and you're like, okay, I'm a couple of tenths quicker, and then you can just like keep getting better, and it was tangible. And then positions on the track too. So by halfway through my first season, I couldn't keep up on the parade laps. My sister and I couldn't. And then by halfway through the season, I broke the track record and I was winning races.
Wow. So this parlays itself into, like, it's a real dedication, and your family supporting you in this to the degree, like, this was something I had no idea, and it's kind of unheard of, especially, again, coming from a Midwest family. Now you're going to leave your family. You're going by yourself?
I did when I was 16.
Moving to the UK. What was that all about? Like, what? First of all, why? Second of all, what was your experience like?
Well, I had met someone when I was 14 years old at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that he was in this suite with this, this family that owned a race team, and he was British, and I just started asking a lot of questions. And a couple of years later, this group, this guy in the family, contacted my parents and said, "Hey, we'd been following your career, your daughter's career, and we'd like to have a conversation with you about, next steps and helping her in her career." So we almost didn't go. It was like a 4-hour drive each way from where we lived in Illinois to Indianapolis, and it was pouring down with rain that day. And we ended up going and having the meeting and drove home. And they presented the idea for me to go to England to race. And they said that I could learn more in England in 1 year than 5 years in the States. I mean, that was just something that they said, or at least that's how I remember it. Memory is what % true at this point in time? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that was the gist of it. And so it was just an opportunity to progress. And so I went over and did it. My parents were super sad. I think my mom cried a lot, but they were like, "Man, we'd rather you go and have it be sad than not have the opportunity at all." So thankfully my parents were really open about that and allowed me, because I left junior year. It was halfway through junior year. So
That's huge.
I was actually gone. I actually really only went through sophomore year. Junior year, I went for a month, then I was gone in England for 2 months, and then I came back for a month. And so I only went half of the first half. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's maybe one of the best compliments, because I've written my intelligence off a lot because there's a lot of stuff that I don't know that maybe is classic stuff that you learn in school, like timelines of history and things like that. And I didn't learn it, nor would it maybe stick. I don't know. And so I kind of have dismissed myself and just said I'm not very smart. And I've learned that language is not very productive. And I remember one time I was having a conversation with somebody, and he worked at CERN, the collision, the the proton or electron collision machine in CERN, Switzerland. And so he's like a scientist, and he asked me where I went to school, because we were having this intellectual conversation about reality and science and everything that he does. And I'm so curious and such a learner. One of my favorite topics to dive into is quantum physics. So he's like, "Man, where did you go to school?" And I was like, "Oh, I have a GED." I'm like, "I went through like sophomore year." He's like, "What?"
Yeah.
But anyway.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that as well, because I think that, now I know this, the greatest intellectual skill is curiosity. And you have that.
Write that
like
down.
It is so deep within you, and your constant search, and you're questioning things. And I think that one of the best tools of somebody who's not just a great student or somebody who's intelligent, but a great teacher, is somebody that has a nice, healthy amount of skepticism too.
I agree. I would call that open-mindedness. Skepticism is kind of pairs with open-mindedness to me, because you're like not sure, which means you're not committed, as opposed to being all in on something and this is the way. And if you don't believe this, you're going to hell. Or if you do believe this, you're going to hell, whatever the topic is. I think that skepticism kind of implies open-mindedness.
I'm just going to tell you, I think that your experience in high school, or lack thereof, has been a massive advantage in your life. And this rings true because of the way that our education system is structured. Were you actually prepared for life? And in many instances, we know this. We have all this rote memorization. We have a lot of things that we're told we're supposed to learn that doesn't actually apply to success in life or happiness. Or
how much of high school do you use? I mean, I remember doing, I think it was probably algebra 2. It was maybe sophomore year, and we had these things called proofs, and it was
I remember proofs,
something.
yeah.
I never got one right. I mean, I was an AB student. I was like a even with being gone, because I was gone in school from 10 years old. So and I would miss 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 40 days, 50. I mean, I just kept missing more and more school to the point where I left. But I was a really easy AB student, but I didn't understand that. And it's like there's some stuff in school that's just pointless. When do you ever use that? Anyway, that's just a silly example, but there's a lot of stuff you don't use.
Yeah.
There's some stuff you do, and I think that there is value in it, but I think that you've got me onto a topic that I don't even have kids and I have a tremendous opinion on. I think that the curriculum is, most of it is pointless. I think the structure of it all, the age in which you go, the stringency of things, and kids are playful and want to climb trees when they're 5 and they have to sit on a rug in one spot and can't even go to the bathroom. It's like, I get that there needs to be some orderliness and respect and some kind of things, but I wonder if we go too early.
Yeah,
and too long.
We leave from that rug to a desk, and we start to get into order and separation, and
I remember even like in school there was AB. So AB classes, meaning like A, you were smart, and the B classes were not as smart. And I didn't even think anything of it then, but imagine being a kid and being like, you're in the B class.
Yeah. Or worse, our mutual friend Lewis House, he was in special classes, quote, special classes.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Remedial,
Wow.
yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, and now he's written books, and he interviews brilliant people and has a super successful podcast
One of the smartest
himself.
people I know. But it's because, so the bottom line is this, is that the way that our system is structured now, it doesn't allow for your genius. It doesn't allow for your unique gifts and talents to actually be expressed. It's this very cookie cutter uniform thing that you're supposed to know these things and be good at these things. If you don't, you're not smart. So it's creating a system of intelligence that is very relegated to a certain very, very isolated way of thinking. So it's very suppressive to creativity. Even in writing class, like that's something where I loved writing, but I had a conflict with this one teacher in high school because I'm wanting to be more like diverse in the way that I'm saying certain things, right? But that's because I had another teacher who was encouraging of that.
Oh man,
and I'll never forget her, 8th grade, Miss Blackmore. Like she published.
Shout
out Miss Blackmore. She published a piece of I wrote a poem in the school newspaper, right? Aww. So I'm just like, I'm the like when it comes to this, like I got bars, like I have, and then eventually, of course, that skill set, it's not necessarily honed in that setting because you don't have people who are paying attention to your uniqueness. But eventually, again, my last book it's a national bestseller. My previous book is translated in like 21 different countries and different languages.
So cool.
But it's picked up in this environment, but it could have got suppressed. And so I wanted to bring this up because I think it's a wonderful advantage that you have. And so you mentioned this, like the framing and saying that to yourself for so long, like I'm not smart because I have this GED or whatever it is. But man, like I really want to guide, and this is a part of even having you here, health is obviously massively important to me. But a reason that our health is so terrible is also tied to our education system.
Yeah.
And our mental health.
Yeah.
And not being able to understand how valuable we are.
Yeah.
And how beautiful we are as people. So all of this stuff matters. And then you're a walking example of what's possible that's not in this cookie cutter thing. So you get to the UK and you're basically by yourself in this racing world. What is life like? Like, what did you have to learn? Were you like, is cooking for yourself or like, how did this all look?
Well, just to add on to what you were saying about intelligence and this narrow window that we're all graded on and judged to some degree. I don't remember what they all are, but if you probably look up like the types of intelligence, there's a bunch of them. There's like emotional intelligence, artistic intelligence. I'm sure there's like mathematical intelligence, creative. There's all kinds of different kinds. And so, in school, I know there's subjects, but it's this, generally speaking, it's like like we said, the window's so narrow, and some of them really don't get exercised and even tested or introduced or cultivated, maybe at all or very little. So I think anybody that feels like they're not smart in some way, to explore the idea that you just might not know which one you are. And to explore the ways that you feel comfortable and inspired, and where you shine and where you have fun and where you're kind of like drawn to. And you might just have a different kind of intelligence that's, if you cultivate that for yourself, is just as valuable as another one of the intelligences. So I just wanted to say that because I think that's important for people. So I'm in England, and I lived with a girl, and actually I lived with two girls. I started off on a couch in the living room. It was a pull-out couch that turned into a bed. My bag was underneath the staircase, and that's how it started. Eventually, I ended up moving into a shoebox of a room, and it was a single bed, and the width of the bed was probably about as much width as there was next to the bed and around the end, and that's it. It was stuffed in the corner, and it was so tiny. And then the next year, I ended up living with a family. I got in trouble for being my managers heard that I was out and about and partying and having too much fun in England, so they were gonna pull the plug on everything, and there was all these new rules. And were they right? Oh, on some level, sure. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old. I mean, I didn't have parents. I was hanging out with all the other drivers, and, you can do whatever you want over in England pretty much. I mean, legal age is much younger, and so some of it was true, but, I wasn't as bad as anyone, but bad enough. And this is an example of why you can't give anyone a reason. So it's like, you might be going to work and getting all your done, right? Getting it all done. And, but if you show up late or you leave early or whatever, it's like, it's dings against you. And so you just can't give them a reason. If you want a promotion and you aren't following being a model employee, and you want a promotion, like, there's probably some reasons, even if you might be the best candidate. It's like, don't give them a reason. And so I gave him a reason. And so when I went back the next year, I lived with a family. I lived in a bedroom that was next to the front door, and it was in like a little landing area where it was a big open square area. And this family had two kids, and these kids would play soccer every morning, and kick the ball into my door. Didn't matter what time. And I'm sure it was 6 something. And that was painful, and I really couldn't do much. And so I was kind of stuck there. And then the next year, because I was there 3 years, I lived by myself. And so I got a little flat, or whatever they're called, and lived by myself. So then I learned how to cook. That's when I learned how to cook. And when you want to be healthy too, you have to cook. I mean, you can't. It's pretty tough to eat out every day of your life and achieve results or the kind of health that you would want. And I think even more so now, not only do we know about, restaurants, whether it's serving size or how they prepare it, and the oils and the fats and salts and sugars and all the things that go into it that you don't know. And we're like, taking into consideration more so nowadays the sourcing. Like, is it organic? Is it grass-fed? Is there anything humane about this? Is there anything natural? Is this coming from, is my spinach grown by a light, or was it actually grown by the sun? These are things that we care about more now. So I think you got to cook it. You got to be able to cook if you really, really want to achieve true health goals, I think. So I learned how to cook because I wanted to be healthy.
Yeah, and that's another one of those misconceptions about cooking, is that, it's so time intensive. There's all these different things. It doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be. And it can be very simple. I mean, like the simplest, yeah. I mean, you can just grill something up in a pan on the grill. You can throw it in a pan, saute it. You can throw stuff in a crock pot. I mean, that's the easiest way to just have, like, if you want to have a lot of protein around, just in the morning, throw something in a crock pot. 8 or so hours later, I like to crock pot for a long time. It's ready. And then you just shred it up and you've got tender meat for tacos or a side or whatever you want. There's ways that it can be very easy.
Have you used an Instapot? Do you have an Instapot?
I don't, but I just saw a video that was like, guys, I don't really understand I got an air fryer at one point.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work and there's not a lot of space in there. And it's like, if I really want to air fry a lot of things, it's like tray after tray. I saw that you can cook things in a couple of minutes in an Instapot.
Yeah, it's basically witchcraft and wizardry to make your
kind of
food.
like a microwave used to be, right?
It's much cleaner. It's not, all this radiation. However, it's just the way that it works is so mind-blowing. When you see how quickly stuff, and it has, you would think like you're going to lose something. You're going to lose a flavor dynamic. You're going to lose a texture dynamic.
Yeah.
I haven't really noticed that.
Really? Like you can cook chicken in like 4 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's, again,
like chicken breast in like a couple of minutes.
It
or
was
you can
designed
cook
by
rice super quick.
It was designed by Gandalf. Yeah.
Is he a brilliant guy? He must be.
He's a wizard.
He's a wizard.
From Lord of the Rings, which you...
Oh, Gandalf. I never watched those.
Okay.
I can't
You're
believe I haven't.
You're a sci-fi person.
I know.
But not fantasy.
I was just told. My boyfriend was like, I can't believe that you haven't watched these. You really like sci-fi stuff. He's like, Lord of the Rings is that. And I'm like, all right, well, let's begin.
I mean, technically, though, it's more, there's like the fantasy domain.
Yeah.
I think you're still looking for a thread of realism, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but big.
But there's a lot of truth in the
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure. Like there's so many life nuggets in Lord of the Rings. It's bananas.
Okay.
But I just wasted a perfectly good joke. With
on
Gandalf,
someone that
I threw it
hasn't,
out there. But people out there picked it up, though. But yeah,
I'm
so
sure
I was
they're
going to say...
judging me. Don't worry. They're not judging you. They're judging me. They're like, she hasn't seen Lord of the Rings?
But I was actually going to pivot. I was going to say, Harry Potter or whatever, because you lived in the UK.
Haven't watched those either.
But I know you would know the name.
Yeah,
of course. So yeah.
Of course.
And when you told me you lived in the UK and you got a flat and the whole thing, I literally started having Harry Potter imagery in my mind. That's just how I work. So, but going back, when you talked about this, our education system, it brought up, there's this quote that's often attributed to Einstein, which so much of these quotes, like, let's just be honest, we didn't hear him say it, so we don't really know where the quotes come from. But this is attributed to him, but I don't believe that it was him who said this, but it's a brilliant statement. He said that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
Facts, perception. I think so many things boil down to perception, right? I mean, if all that fish knows is a tree and it can't get up it, well, you've got a pretty narrow perception. So that's our perception creates our reality, and we are in control of that. It's not easy. I'm not saying because we're in control, it's easy. It's very hard. It's like the lesson of being a human, but it's totally possible.
But here's the thing too, and this is a remarkable thing about you as well. So of course, a lot of folks cognitively connect you with a race car.
Yeah.
But something that I've noticed that you've done is you've put yourself in a lot of different environments, and even in the domain of race cars, you put yourself in a new environment. And this is the thing about that fish, it might think it's stupid because it can't climb this tree efficiently, but you put that fish in some water, it's on. Yeah. But here's the thing, it might never get that exposure. And so what I want, and part of the mission of even doing the show, is to give people different exposures, right? To encourage them to put themselves in different environments, because that's where your talent or your capacity or your gifts can be accessed, because a lot of stuff is dormant. Like you didn't know you would be good.
Activated, I think, right? Because being dormant, it's not there. It's not like you have to. It's being activated. You then can, once you can understand how you feel doing things, then you understand more of who you are. It's like we don't live very easily in the space of awareness for our emotions and energy around things, and I mean, I've been guilty of this too. Like, you try too hard, you force things, but like what resonates with you, what feels easy, what flows smoothly and quickly, is really like meant for you. So maybe you've had things happen in your life where, you know, all of a sudden just boom, 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 things just start happening, and you rolled out, and you enjoy it, but it also moved really fast too. And so I think people live in resistance a lot. And so by trying things and having the opportunity, you then can feel what's in resonance, because there's so much stuff that is dormant in there. And even like if we look at the like interpersonal relationships, whether it's your parents, kids, partners, sometimes friendships too, like somebody will do something and there'll be some out of bounds response, and it's a trigger, and we don't really see it as that. We think it's them. And so like life is trying to show us too, like our resonance with stuff, and like and show us what's dormant in us or what's activated in us too. So it's like, you know, if you have a judgment on something and somebody does it and you have a reaction, it's like, whoa, what was that reaction about? So like stuff is kind of hidden in plain sight. But the fact that it's in you and you can't see yourself that easily. Life is just an experience of seeing yourself through other people. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it's kind of true.
Yeah. It's terrifying and beautiful as
Yeah.
well, depending
Yeah.
on your perception.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's like you can look at something as being a blessing that you got this lesson and you can move forward, or you can look at it as being a roadblock, or you can look at it as being something that, you always deal with. You can identify, you can sort of victimize yourself, and a lot of times it becomes your identity. Then you're like the person who does this or always has this happen, and so if your perception is that's true, well, you're going to keep getting more of it.
It's powerful because, you know, even in this moment, an example, I don't see you. I see my perception of you,
Exactly.
you know, and with that, but here's the beautiful part and thing about you that is remarkable, that we all have this capacity, is because I'm aware of this, I'm opening myself, because when we have this perception, we tend to get locked into it, versus me being open to you being something different than what I'm perceiving you to be, you know? And it's just like that creates this endless opportunity for connection, for, you know, for admiration and all the good qualities that we connect
We can
to.
see it in ourselves, right? So whatever you're seeing in me is in you. Otherwise, you can't see it.
That's
you know?
some deep stuff. Come on. I'm going to give you some snaps
Right?
for that.
Because that's why people get taken advantage of, because they're not a manipulator. So they get manipulated. A manipulator knows when they're getting manipulated, usually. Right? So it's like, you know, it's like if you're not a narcissist and you are spending time with a narcissist, you don't know they are, because it's not in you. Like, you don't have the patterns. And so, yeah, when it's like, but also on the other side, which is the positive side, is that when you look at someone, you're like, wow, they're just really kind. Like, you have that in you. Like, that's a strong aspect of you, or you know what I mean? So it's constantly showing, we're constantly seeing ourselves. And I think that we can turn that ship, right? It can go from we can be in a negative space where you see negative things, and that might be really how you're looking at yourself. And then you can turn that ship too. You know, it's not set in stone.
Wow. You know, this also reminds me, yesterday I was talking to my son. I teach him on a couple of days a week, nutrition and anatomy.
Oh.
And so we had just finished class, and you know, he said something crazy. I was teaching him class. We're on our roof yesterday.
Oh, cool.
You know, so it's getting some vitamin D, you know, and having our class and talking. But then it was like some little joke about, you know, like him getting pushed off the roof or some kind of little, but it was like a funny little thing. But then he was like, that would never happen. Nobody would push me, you know, whatever. I'm just like, B.
Because he would never push someone.
Yes. And also, I was like, we all have the capacity for the most terrible things, but we also have the capacity for the most beautiful things.
Yeah.
We've got to understand that all of this exists within us. That recognition, though, is kind of where you live. What are you most attuned to is what you'll tend to see in others.
Yeah.
But you've got to understand, even when you mentioned that the narcissism, that's such a great example of why you can't pick that up.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to learn that skill, or it'll keep happening, and you can recognize the pattern, but you can decide. And I want to ask you about this, about contrast and understanding what you don't want.
You know more what you do want. I mean, if Abraham Hicks hasn't said that a million times. Have you ever listened to any of those?
Of course,
I
yeah.
love Abraham Hicks.
Dabbled in a little, yeah.
Contrast, when you know what you don't want, you know more of what you do want, and you keep filling in your grid for the future of bringing that thing to you. It's
So
true.
absolutely it
Contrast is
is.
important, and that's kind of the experience of being alive in this reality too. Is, you know, when you have something negative happen, you can recognize the positive. Same thing as when you have something really positive happen, you can recognize the negative. And so you can sift through, I'm using literally the words that Abraham Hicks would say, but you're sifting through contrast, and you're starting, you kind of get better and better at it, and you weed away the things that you don't want over and over and over again, and you kind of continue to narrow and narrow down to a reality that feels better more of the time than it used to. I hope.
Fingers crossed. You know, I want to go back to, because I'm curious about this, like who on earth, I think I might actually know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you since I have you here, which is just so awesome. So you had this experience in England, which is just like a 1 in a billion type scenario, of course, the Captain Obvious, like not only are you plucking yourself from conventional education here in the United States and you're in another country, but you're also a lady, which is very unique in this particular sport. And but from that experience, you come back home. I would imagine your personality's probably shifted. You probably have different things going on mentally. How did you get, when you came back, how did you get from there to getting your behind into an IndyCar?
Well, I came back different for sure. I came back cold. My family, my parents were like, "God, you're just so different. You're cold now." And I had probably an accent.
A little dabble.
Cheerio, like, I asked a lot of questions instead of making statements. They're like, everything's a question. Very British. You're all right. You're all right, aren't you? You're like, that's all right, isn't it? Like it's always a question. But anyway, I came back much colder because of life experiences. You open up to people and they don't reciprocate, or they throw you under the bus, or they make your life difficult. And so, and it's not as respectful, and it's not a reciprocal experiences. So I came back much more shut down and cold. And I was 19 and I came back like partway through a season. I literally never had done this before, but my sister was with me, thankfully. And my manager said, don't go to the track. We're going to bring you home. Like, cause I just wasn't getting the right treatment. I wasn't getting the right equipment. And so they're like, you're going to come back. And so I didn't show up at the track, and then I ended up flying back home, moving back home. And then my dad and I just started going to IndyCar races and walking around talking to race teams. And not in IndyCar, but the lower level. There was Formula Atlantic, and there was also Indy Lights then. And so, going around to those teams and seeing if they would even just test me in a car. And nobody wanted to. And then finally, I went to the IndyCar race is in Milwaukee, which is only like within an hour of our house. And similar to that pivotal point in time when my dad and I decided to go down to Indianapolis for the meeting with the family that wanted to help me go to England, I almost didn't want to go to the track that day. I was over it. I was like, Dad, we pound the pavement and walk around and nobody wants to help us. Nobody wants to do anything. I'm sick of it. And he's like, let's just go for like 45 minutes and we'll turn around and we'll come home. I'm like, fine. So we go. And I had a call from someone that week that was like a really odd, just coincidental bit of information where somebody said that if there was a race team for me in the Formula Atlantic series, that there was a sponsor that would be willing to sponsor it. So I went to the track and I saw my old friend Bobby Rahal, who I met in England because he was running a Formula One team for a while. And so we went to, I think, like a TGI Fridays in Milton Keynes where we lived. And very caught up and became sort of friends. And Anyway, I only saw him a couple of times, but being American, you already have kind of that built-in friendship. And so I come back, and he had come back as well. He wasn't running the Formula One team anymore. And I saw him at the racetrack, and I was like, "Hey, Bobby," I was like, "Apparently, there's a sponsor that's willing to pay for this if there's a letter of intent that you're going to start a Formula Atlantic team for me." And he said, "Okay, let's do it." And I was like, "Okay." And 2 weeks later, at Laguna Seca, the next IndyCar race, we had a press conference and signed the letter of intent in front of everybody else and in front of the media, and off to the races. And so
Literally.
and so in 2003 and 4, I raced Atlantic, and then 2004 in May, which was the beginning of the season. The seasons in racing start around February, March-ish time. So this is May, and I'm like barely into my second season in Atlantic. I'm standing there watching media day at the Indy 500, just watching, because I'm a Formula Atlantic driver. I'm not an IndyCar driver. And at the front of the room during the media day, Bobby says that I'm going to race in the Indy 500 and full-time IndyCar next year. And I didn't even get that memo. I was like, oh my God. And so I don't know how that all, I actually really should ask him like how that all transpired, and like how we've talked, we're still friends. So I should ask him how that all happened, because I don't remember getting the memo that I was going to be racing IndyCars the next year, but that's how I found out. And so next year I raced IndyCar, and then I almost won the Indy 500 that 1 year later.
That was bananas. That's when like everything
Yeah.
went to like astronomical levels. You know, this is obviously the biggest race in the world in that sport.
Yeah.
And your rookie season, you are like really right there to win this thing. And, you know, it's riveting. Like the crowd is going nuts. Everybody's acting different like than they usually act because of your circumstances, you know, like this isn't supposed to happen in so many different ways. And so all the qualities that make you who you are put you in that position to do that thing, you know, despite all the pressures, despite all of the, the seeming advantages that other people might have, you know, even your story and getting there to that moment and like literally coming down to the wire of you like wanting to just throw the whole thing away.
Oh yeah.
Like it's so remarkable. You weren't like picked as like this person's gonna be the next.
Oh no.
And so when that took place and you ended up getting fourth, which is just, that's in and of itself that nobody would have ever thought anything like that. You know, I know even as I'm talking to you, I know you of course wanted to win. I know that. And it was really, really close, obviously.
Yeah.
But when that happened, the sport changed. You brought in I don't want to give analogies, but you know, it's kind of like a Tiger Woods type moment of like, you're bringing all these people who don't pay attention to the sport are paying attention to the sport now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it'd be so interesting, so cool to be able to re-experience it. Like if I could plug myself back into 2005 when that all happened and be able to feel it and see what was all going on, but with these eyes and this experience now, it'd probably blow me away.
So from that point, obviously, you know, there's an expectation now seeing what you can actually do against the world's best and you being in that guild. What did you do that was, you know, this was Japan when something really remarkable happened.
Yeah,
How
a few
long was
years
it from
later.
that moment until Japan took place? And what was it like in between?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, it took 3 years. And I mean, the first Japan that I went to, which was the race before the Indy 500 in 2005, which was my first year, I qualified on the front row. I finished fourth. And then, you know, I had a bunch of poles that first year of my IndyCar career. I mean, there was chances and it just didn't happen. And so finally in 2008 it did. It's like a driver told me, you're going to be doing the same thing that you do every day. Like you're going to just be doing the same old thing. And then all of a sudden you're just going to win. And I'm like, okay. And that's kind of what happened.
And so this is where I think a lot of people cognitively, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. Some people just connect you to NASCAR.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I'm more IndyCar than I even was NASCAR though. I mean, I raced IndyCar I raced open wheel cars all the way until NASCAR. I started doing a little bit of NASCAR in 2010 and 11, and then but still full time IndyCar, and then I did full time NASCAR starting in 2012, and the first full Cup year was 13, which is when I started. Which is then that was cool. That kind of kicked off with qualifying on the pole for the Daytona 500. So, yeah.
And was that your first or second year?
Well, it was my first full time year. I had
Crazy. Listen.
Yeah.
How that transition from IndyCar to
It
NASCAR,
was
like
totally
you had
different,
never
too.
driven a NASCAR type car, right?
No.
What the? How? Who are you? That's crazy.
I mean, I just, maybe to kind of encapsulate like who am I and what drives me and even why I retired, and even going back to the very beginning with go-karts and telling the story about racing and having it be an instant gratification thing and being able to have lap times. I always liked the process. The mug that you got me. And I didn't realize it as much. I wasn't as aware that I loved the process that much. But I really loved the process, and I loved the hope of having a better race the next race or the next year. And so, yeah, I mean, whatever formula I was in with the IndyCar and NASCAR, it was like the hope of doing better, the hope, the process of learning something new, the experience of it. As painful as it is sometimes, through pain comes growth, and my life mission is to grow and to help people want to do the same thing, and so I ended up just feeling like at the end, and why I retired, a big part of it was just I didn't feel like I had hope for the next year, like the team I was with was not going to have me back because there was a sponsorship issue. And I was like, man, I just don't want to go to a lesser team. And I want to be able to do well, like I would rather get paid less and go to a better team than get paid more and go to a lesser team. Like that was always about just being able to have progress and hope. So that's kind of how it's always been for me with everything. It's like once something feels stagnant or like there's no more hope anymore, it's like, what's the point? Doesn't matter what facet of life you're looking at. What's the point?
Coincidentally, I just got you a mug, which you collect mugs. Apparently, it's one of the things that
right
you like.
On. I love that you knew that, and it's kind of symbolic because I love that process and I love the journey of life. And it says the mug says, "Enjoy the journey," and that's so true. Like people that get associated with a destination, it's always elusive. It's the dangling carrot that you can never reach, because it'll always be something else. And it's great to have goals, and that's super important. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have things that you want and aspire to, but if you can't enjoy the process and the journey along the way, then your life is going to merely be that arduous, painful lack. It's like a lack mindset because you don't have it. That kind of gets to more of the energy and frequency thing of life, is that when you want something so badly, there's the energy of not having it there. And that's not in resonance, because it is. In the quantum field, it's out there. It's out there waiting for you.
Yeah. Contrary to popular belief, the achievement of a goal can actually bring about depression because the process is now gone. But then the other side of depression could look like they're not moving towards a goal because they feel the goal is unattainable, or the connection isn't there, whatever the case might be. So the joy or the growth, the anti-depression, exists in the middle, where you have something you're striving towards, but understanding that it's a continuous process. Because once you achieve said thing, and you could ask so many people that people look towards, like their life, if I only had whatever it is. Once they achieve that thing, the pinnacle of whatever it was, they experience a lull. Like there's a dip in their emotional fortitude, because that striving is now complete. And so I think a gift that we can give our children, that we can give future generations, even ourselves today, is understanding that you never arrive. It's just this kind of strange thing. It's because of movies, happily ever after. After this thing happens, But in reality, attaching yourself to something or to a mindset that you always proactively choose growth, proactively choose something that you're working on. You know, have your goals, like you said. I love that you said that. It's great to have goals, but understand that this goal is just, that's a launching pad to the next thing.
Sure. It's just an idea.
So I want to ask you about this. What do you think about, so first I'm going to ask this. What is your favorite racing movie?
Days of Thunder.
Days of Thunder.
Yeah.
My guy, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Now, full confession. I've watched probably every Tom Cruise movie, even The Outsiders. Like, people don't even know about that.
I don't even know about that.
So this is when he was super young. It's based on the book. Oh. You know, I even watched Jack Reacher like this weekend. All right.
Wow.
But I've never seen Days of Thunder.
Oh my God.
Of like every movie I've seen,
so
probably
great.
all of them.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And then Talladega Nights is pretty funny too.
Ricky Bobby.
And there's some truth to it too.
Which part? The cougar part?
Yeah, probably.
You know, getting in the car with the
cougar. Not the cougar. I thought you meant girls. Oh man.
Well, part of it, he became afraid to get into the car.
That's true.
You know, and so his dad, the guy who plays his dad in that movie, I would see him at the gym all the time prior to everything getting shut down.
Oh wow.
He was just walking around the gym. I've been at gyms literally all over the world, seeing all kinds of people.
Yeah.
But it is very rare to see a person who's just smiling all the time.
Oh, really? So he's like a really happy person.
He's just
he had
walking
to play
around
like a miserable
smiling.
drunk guy. It's not him.
Right.
Great job.
Right. It's amazing acting. But he's got his headphones on. And he's just got this, like, it didn't seem like a manufactured smile, like this very subtle smile on his face walking around. And it's just, and he's also in Office Space. Like, yeah, I'm gonna need you to come in.
I'm gonna need you to come in on Saturday. You know what? I'm gonna need you to come in on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Okay, that's a great movie too.
Brilliant. And also, so in that scene, Ricky Bobby's afraid to get into the car, so he throws the cougar in the car, a live cougar, and he's just like, if you got to be able to wrestle with that fear. You get in there and you're calm, cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's all going to work out. But, it didn't work out like that for him at that point in the movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you said some parts of truth.
His perception to change.
Right.
For if you can get in with the cougar, you can go out there by yourself on the track. It kind of worked, though, I think. He got back out there.
Eventually, after he got mauled by the cougar.
In the me car.
Yeah. So you said that there's some truth in Ricky Bobby's ballad, the ballad of Ricky Bobby.
Sure.
Like what?
Well, like, I mean, fancy ladies at the track, and I don't know if like one swaps one for another. Maybe it will happen. Maybe, I'm sure that's happened. But
is there any shake and bake action on the track?
There used to be. Some shake and bake action. It was back when they repaved Daytona. And it was so fast, and all the cars were glued to the ground, and you could do anything out there. And so there was a phase of bump drafting. So cars would link up. And so in the front of the car is a grill, and it goes to the radiator, keeps things cool. So you'd keep the grill open on the right side so that you could get enough airflow, and you'd drive behind the car. You drive behind the car in front of you, locked into their bumper, pushing them. And have like your right side peeked out so that you could keep the engine cool. The more straight in line you are, the faster you'll go, because you have like multiple horsepower. You have both of your engines, but one car doesn't have any drag, any drag from the air. So it's like it boosts the whole thing. And so then you'd practice swapping in practice and being really efficient with that, and because you'd basically have a tandem partner. So you had a shake and bake partner. We did that for a little while. Then it became illegal because people didn't like watching it.
Holy moly.
Yeah, that was a weird phase. I just want you guys to know that it feels like maybe you're going to hit the car in front of you or beside you or a wall. But I'm here to tell you that when we were bump drafting, you felt like you were literally like driving underneath the car. You were so far up their ass. Like it was like, that's how close it has to visually look for you to be touching them.
That's nuts. And at what speed are you going?
200. And some 220. I don't know.
That's bananas. All right,
The
so
only place we ever used speed really was at the Indy 500, and you just go off of averages. It'd be like like a 230 average, or a 236 average, or a 228 average, or whatever. That's the only time we used it. But we weren't even using peak speed. We were using average speed of the lap.
all right. Let me give this some context. All right, I think there've been a nice percentage of folks who've gone 100 miles an hour. All right,
Yeah, I'm
which
sure.
is it feels pretty freaking fast now. Double that.
Double that, and then bump draft, and then worry about people around you. Oh yeah,
That's bananas.
it was like a I'm gonna think of a better word for the first. It's like a chaotic ballet out there. You're like artistically like flowing through because you've got someone behind you. You can't make your own moves. You're with someone, and you just have to weave your way through it all. It was a very interesting time.
Have you ever had? Obviously, things are happening incredibly fast, but one of the qualities that probably is required is a sense of presence.
Yeah,
I would imagine things are much slower for you than somebody else who would be thrust into that situation. So do things have things ever kind of like slowed down for you in these moments?
Crashes always did. There's some things in life we can all experience that all of a sudden, like, there's a sort of transcendence of time where it doesn't seem to be linear anymore. Like, it's like, wow, I felt like it took forever, or what, and crashes were one of them, where you saw something kind of coming and happening, and you got, whoa, God, and then you start losing it, and you're spinning. And I always had a thought. I always had the same thought, and that thought was, this is gonna hurt. And then you just kind of like close your eyes and tuck up and wait for it to slow down and be over. And yeah, but when you watch it on film, and it's like, and you're like, oh. So
Wow.
things would slow down in a wreck.
That sounds like that literally sounds like a movie. When they go put into slow motion.
Yeah.
There's
Consciousness is interesting.
There's this quote that I saw that you had in your home. It was like I think it was maybe a piece of art or something like that, and it said that if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Yeah, my mom got that for me actually. It was in my little yoga room back in North Carolina, and it's true. I mean, I think that I've always been a firm believer of dreaming as big as possible, like just as big as possible. That even if you don't even think it's possible, like if you don't think it's possible, but dream into it. Right? Like, I want to be an astronaut and I want to go land on Mars. Right? I mean, like, just come up with anything, whatever feels like, man, that would be amazing. Make it feel fun. Be like a kid about it. Yeah, because if you fall short, then, which, we have these dreams and aspirations, and if they're big enough, you might achieve them. But if you don't, you probably still kicked ass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to require so much growth.
Yeah.
Just moving in that direction. That's what people really miss out on. Like, just start doing the thing. Start going in that direction.
How about just even know what you want to do?
Wow, yeah.
I think most people don't even know what they'd want to do if they could do anything. Like, being truly pragmatic about it and, like, intentional with the thinking and with visualizing and answering that question. I think a lot of people don't have an answer. They might be like, oh man, I don't know, go to the beach and lay there. They might have some flippant answer, but like, truly, what would you do if you could do anything?
Let's talk about the importance of clarity, because I also noted that you watched The Secret before you won that race in Japan.
I did. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I ended up interviewing Rhonda too, which was really fun. She's so spiritual and so tapped in and interesting, and yeah, Rhonda Byrne. She was really cool.
I mean, what are the odds of that, though? Like, you watch that and then you win in Japan after 3 years.
I know. Visualizing it and creating it. I mean, again, I love quantum physics. So, like, the idea, and it's law of attraction. So it's the idea of, knowing what you want, asking for what you want, visualizing what you want, creating the feeling inside of your body of getting it, and then, which is part of the visualization, and then there's an energetic cord attached to it. And so now it's just a matter of time And so there's two parts that are hard. One is truly believing it, right? I think that's actually probably one of the hardest parts. And then the magic of sort of like putting yourself there, imagining it has happened or has come to you. That's hard too, because that gets down to some worthiness stuff and some good enough stuff and some deserving and truly believing, because it's like, it gets hard to visualize stuff that you want if you don't think it's going to come. So you got to believe it. That's really the magic sauce in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And not the believing visually, like the universe isn't responding to our words, it's responding to our emotions and our truth and what we really believe. And so you can say, like, I could say all day, I'm gonna go dunk a basketball. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go dunk a basketball. For those who don't know, I'm 5'1.5". I'm gonna go dunk a basketball. I know I can't dunk a basketball, right?
But even if that is if you're so focused on this is what I've seen to be true, which you're right for sure, is that something, it'll be a different variation of that will show up in your life. So an example is, like, I'm thinking in basketball is Tim Grover, he was a personal trainer for Kobe Bryant, for Michael Jordan, for Dwayne Wade. He had aspirations of playing in the NBA, the whole thing. But with that intention and his goal, he kept moving forward and ended up in the NBA, but in the form of training the greatest players in the world. Yeah. Right? So it's just like, it might show up in a different variation. Agreed. That can be of awe and revelation and surprise and beauty. Yeah. So what might happen is, you might have this vision of you dunking a basketball, and then we walk outside and somebody's rolling into the office next door a little, door hoop, and we're just like, we were just talking about basketball.
I know.
Alley-oop.
That's right. That stuff does happen. I mean, that's where having goals is important, but you kind of alluded to it earlier. Like, but understand that it can come in different ways, and it's not always. This is the important to not get too attached to those outcomes. I mean, I think the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success is a great one by Deepak Chopra, just to, line out those things, which is, don't be attached to outcomes. Because that creates an expectation level. You can be disappointed. So setting intentions, but then letting it go and understanding that maybe the universe has a better plan, or maybe there's just something that will fit better with you. I don't care, God, whatever word you want to use, universe, God, source, magic in life. I don't know, whatever you want to say that makes sense to you and feels like it resonates with you, but just trust that you don't have all the answers, but you are the dreamer. Thoughts become things.
There's something I want to have this conversation, because one of the things that I know is that even myself, like we have no idea of how powerful we are.
True.
It's just like there's levels to it. And for everybody listening, I really want them to start to step into and really understand how powerful you are to create your reality. Yeah. And these principles, it can sound very, for some people, very hopeful. So for some people, it's like very obvious and like it's based on some pretty sound science. For some people, it can sound totally ridiculous that, you're attracting things into your life or whatever the framing is. And so I'll tell you right now, when I watched the film, I lived in Ferguson, Missouri. My mattress was on the floor. I was barely making ends meet. I was a college student. We're just about to graduate. And, I see this and I immediately am filled with ideas. Like I started like mapping out, okay, well, maybe I'll open a gym or I'll create a t-shirt company or whatever. I just started creating stuff. Like I felt very inspired. And cut to today, many of the people who are in the film are my friends. Like Michael Beckwith is my guy. Like he just texted me before the show started, and he resonated with me the most. Like I saw more of myself like in him. What are the odds that somebody in Ferguson, Missouri, now like he's over at my house all the time. There's like, and literally there are millions of people that are vying for his attention. There's something about me that connected with him as well. And even for us to meet, it was under the most remarkable circumstances. We didn't meet here in the United States. We met in Portugal, right? It's just like, That is like, come on. Bob Proctor, Lisa Nichols. Like, I've done so many things for her different events as
Wow.
well. You know, I've had her on several times as well. She flew to St. Louis to see me, you know, because it's
Wow.
nuts, you know. John Gray, who else? Jack Canfield.
Jeez.
But of course, it's creating something for that to come into your life.
Yeah.
You know, like I created this platform, and
Mm-hmm.
I did what was necessary to become the type of person
Mm-hmm.
that can have these relationships. So coming from where I come from to be in that position, it is a part of it. But what tends to happen is like we think it's the person, like it's just that person is just, I'm this way. Like Shawn already had whatever. No, 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 no. I was lost in the sauce. I was not okay, you know. But I was at that point. I had such
Thanks
a
for sharing that too. I think that's important stuff for people.
yeah.
Be
Thank you.
vulnerable, you know.
But I think the biggest quality that I had at that time was a willingness, which is just going back to what you were saying, just that, you know, that the process, and just like I was
Mm-hmm.
just moving. I started just doing things, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just subtly moved me in the right direction. But I asked Michael Beckwith, you know, he's sitting right there in that chair, about when bad things happen,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially to good people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do we attract these things? That sounds
Mm-hmm.
terrible. And
Mm-hmm.
he immediately was like, you know, we've got to understand that there's something bigger than all of this. Like, we have, and we don't know. This is the thing. Like, I'm a very analytical person. I'm a
Yeah.
scientist. The most remarkable thing about us, we know nothing about really, you know, which is we have a soul assignment, is what he said.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're coming here and we're into certain conditions. Like, it's 1 in a billion chance that you were born, let alone to this particular parents at this particular part of
Oh
the
yeah.
globe, and just all these things. And you're born into these conditions that are going to warrant certain qualities to emerge in you. Bad things are going to happen
Mm-hmm.
that qualify you to be the person that you can become, you
Yeah.
know? And so, you know, for me, and now I can see it, even when something, what I would refer to as negative happens, I'm just like, what is it for me? How did I attract this situation? What do I need to learn from this
Sure.
situation? You know, what gift is in this?
Yes. There it is. Exactly. It's like, because of course the first reaction is like, right? The first reaction to negative things is can be that way. But the I think the wisdom is how quick can you turn it? How quick can you turn that into a positive and into an opportunity? And when you deal with difficult things, there's always an opportunity to grow and learn something. And so even at a minimum, there's that. And yeah, perception. Back to the beginning.
Back to the
Back to the
beginning,
beginning.
you know, and also puts the power in our hands to,
Yeah.
when a negative thing does happen, or that happened prior to you being aware of these things, you know, whether it is, you know, I've been through it. I've been through it all, you know, the abuse, you know, the poverty, whatever the case might be. And it's not, again, like you're consciously attracting these bad things. It's when I realize that I have a role in it,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that I don't have to carry that. I can
Mm-hmm.
change. I can understand the contrast. I got a great example of how not to be
Yeah.
a father, you know, and so now I'm going to choose this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so just embracing some of these tenets that are happening, whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
is that, you know, the power is really in your hand to change. And
Well, you said it. We know so much less about ourselves than we know. I mean, we don't even understand how the brain works. We don't understand consciousness. We don't understand why we know we're having thoughts, right? There's obviously something above our thoughts because we know we're having thoughts. I'm thinking. It's like a fish doesn't know it's an ocean because it's just, or a fish, it's just is, right? But we know we have thoughts. It's like, there's so much, so much. I mean, we have junk DNA. What's that? We have, black matter, dark matter. What is that? Like, we don't, that's all. We just give it a title. We think because it has a title, it is something. It's because we don't know. There's so much stuff we don't know.
yeah, what
And
bakes, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, and I heard someone say, I do a lot of spiritual stuff and take trips and have a lot of friends in the space. And, one of the things that was said was like, you know, don't, it's okay to expect magic, right? Like, I think people get a little shocked by that. But expecting magic is kind of the way it's supposed to go. Maybe that's the way it used to go. I went to Egypt last year and I'm like, I think there was a lot more magic back in those days. Magic as in I would call magic very much just stuff that science can't prove, But then again, there's a whole lot of stuff we can't prove. So why not just add to the list?
That's facts. What bakes my noodle, what I was going to say is that just seeing the observable universe, because we can't even observe the vast majority of it, but the observable universe has billions of galaxies.
Oh my God. We're in one. I mean, we don't even know. There's so many different concepts about that. I mean, there's a concept of the multiverse, right? Of having universes that are like bubbles. That's how they represent it in a photo. Is like there's different universes. Like there's galaxies within the universe. I mean, like it's just blows your mind. I remember being a kid and looking up to the stars at night and just getting a headache thinking, it goes on forever, but then at the end of forever, there's no end. It's more. I can't understand this. It's always my fascination. I love learning about that stuff.
Yeah, it's so cool. We're a part of it, like, and because we're part of it, we're connected to all of it.
I know, right? And that's why, some people are more connected to things than others, or more tapped into the feeling, but that's why somebody that you don't even know can get hurt, but you care, right? Because you're connected, and neighborhood used to be tons of trees and gets cut down for a, track neighborhood to go in. And you're like, oh man, that's a bummer. Like, why would you care? It has nothing to do with you, except it does. And we're connected to everything. And that's also why, when you get into more of those spiritual spaces and working with energy in the universe, people, that can tap into frequencies, they can tap into the Akashic records, they can tap into, past souls. I interviewed Teresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, and just hearing her do that. And I've talked to many different people like that. Just different energies and frequencies going on. And once you know that, even just from a pure awareness standpoint, for us, our vision and our hearing is at this, this is how much we can hear and see. We hear and see about that much of the spectrum. And that's the spectrum we know about.
Yeah. And you just mentioned interviewing because you have your own show.
I do
now, yeah. And you've already you've had some incredible guests and incredible
had
episodes.
You on.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I qualify. That's
so fun.
Cool. And
I love learning. It's the best way to learn. I'm already deep diving on plenty of topics. So then when someone that I don't know as much about, I just deep dive on it, or the subject that they're into, and it's so fun. So fun. It's such a great, you meet so many people, make so many friends, incredible networking, and then I just get to interview and talk to and become friends with people that I'm fascinated with. It's the best. And educate people and have cool conversations and share experiences. And, the whole point of the show for me is, it's so funny. I just yesterday had a big, we called it DPV Summit. So Danica Patrick Ventures. I have a bunch of different companies, and so we all came together for a summit, and I opened up and just thanked everyone for coming. And sounds formal, but they're all my friends, but of course you still say thank you for coming. And at the end of, after expressing what I wanted to accomplish in the day, was to remind them that they're part of something bigger, and that this isn't about me. This isn't about serving me. This is about serving everyone. This is all of my companies boil down to, and all the things that I do boil down to. Even at the end of my career in racing, I realized that inspiring people was important, and just being out there was enough for people. It was never enough for me, which is why I did more than just go out there and participate. But I want to continue to inspire when I was done. And so that's the core of it all, is opening people's minds up. I'm not trying to tell you what to believe. I'm just trying to say maybe it could be different, or maybe it's not what you think. And maybe this is possible. You think it's not, but maybe it is possible. And so it's to kind of just fracture the mental landscape of how you think it is to other ways that it maybe could be, and bringing the light in and showing more is really the point of it. And it's the point of all my companies foundationally at the bottom, whether it's, I have two wines, Somnium, which is a Napa Valley wine that I started back in 2009, actually. Danica Rosé, which is French rosé. Just launched a candle company called Voyant, which is the seer. So it's very intentional, based on essential oils and flowers and certain smells and the nature of what they do. I learned a lot about that in Egypt. And the other facets, even my speaking engagements. I do a lot of speaking engagements. And so I just reminded them that it's not about how to make me money or make me successful. It's how to help people. That's the whole point. I've lost plenty of money in a lot of my businesses. It's not about making money, or I would have sold them all or not done them in the first place. So, I think that that's foundationally something that's really important to me. And so that's the answer to why I do the podcast. Is I just want to open people's minds up.
Yeah. And the podcast is called Pretty Intense.
Yeah. Because I've been described as pretty intense. I also had a book come out a couple of years back called Pretty Intense. So it has a workout program in it. It has recipes that I wrote and photographed. I know, I photographed them even. And then there's, a bunch of chapters just on mindfulness and how to it's like grassroots of like building a foundation of connection to yourself.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
That's my happy time, my me time. It puts me in the right mood for the day. It doesn't require a lot. It's 30 minutes. And having that plan, having a program to follow that gives you a little bit of structure, I feel like that makes us feel empowered again. When you take even the tiniest little bit of control back,